Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So, the question has come up, how do you learn magic? What are the steps that you can take in order to learn how to wield and use magic? And there are so many components to exploring and becoming aware of magical energies and so forth. First is getting rid of the mental processes that hold us back, like the negative things we tell ourselves. I can't do it. It's not real. Um, this isn't going to work. Self-doubt is definitely a huge thing. So really, to become an effective magic user, doing the shadow work is really important in order to clear that stuff out, turning your assets or your liabilities into assets and taking responsibility for your own energy. The only thing that works in this is actual practice. You can read 1,000 books and still not know how to cast a spell, how to perform a ritual, how to connect with a deity. These are not things that happen from reading books. They can give you lots of ideas, there's no doubt. They can give you information that is valuable and that can help you, but it's only in the actual doing that you start to open up those pathways that are in your spirit, in your body, in your mind, in your subconscious and your unconscious, connecting those things together so that you become a unified individual. And I've talked about this as being the goal and the whole point of doing magical practice and becoming a part of the community in the first place. It's not about wielding power, being able to do amazing things. Amazing things definitely can happen, and I certainly have had my share of some amazing things that have happened to me. But the main point is that self-realization and individuation, taking responsibility for your own development, your own actions, and your path. And making actual choices instead of just wandering around through it, thinking that would be cool if I could do that, this would be cool if I could do this, whatever it might be. Because those things can happen, like I said, but they aren't really the point. So the only way to get good at this is to do it. Like when I put out the Sacred Tree meditation and the healing chant, when I first started the channel, I wasn't sure if I'd still be talking to you guys, like almost 3 years later now, or over 2 years anyway. And I thought, if I'm going to share the most important things that I've learned, this one meditation is probably about the most important thing that I have, because it does so much to help you get in touch with yourself. It's all about the grounding, and then the shielding, creating boundaries, because shielding only works if you have boundaries, the connecting with the rest of the planet, all of those other forms of consciousness that are out there, that are in trees and stones and animals and things like that. As long as you're just focused on you, then you can't focus on other. And so that connecting to the planet via being a tree, and then connecting to the sky, to spirit, and bringing that down, being a person who walks and connects the earth to the sky, so that we become an this is the wrong word coming in my head. We become a bridge between the spirit world and the physical world. And with that comes definitely responsibility, but you learn that as you go. I mean, if you're not going to be responsible, the universe is just going to whack you and put up blocks. And that's the fascinating thing about this whole path, is that a lot of times, you decide you're going to do something, and that something today starts to come, and then all of a sudden there's like a block. Someone stuck a rock in your plan. And the question is, Is it a rock that's sitting there to protect you from doing something that would not be good for you? Or is that a rock that's sitting there to test your resolve to see if you're actually serious about what you want to do? Because you can get both kind of rocks. It's annoying. And so you have to like decide for yourself if what kind of is this a warning or is this a test? And I believe that spirit, universe, or whatever tests us on a regular basis, not because it thinks we're falling short, but it's testing to see what do we want. You know, we need to define what we want our relationship with the universe to be. And so if we say, I'm going to go do this ritual, the universe says, yeah, but you've never done one of these before. Are you really sure this is actually what you want to do? Here, let's put up this rock and see what happens. And you go like, no, this really is what I want to do, so I'm going to find a way around this rock and I'm going to go. And the universe goes like, oh, okay. You seem to be serious about this, so maybe we'll throw a few other rituals at you so you can actually, you know, follow this path and see how far you get. And that's how I see it. It's like, when we talk about boundaries, this is why boundaries are important. If you cannot define who you are and what you want, the universe cannot do anything to help you. It doesn't know what you want. If you don't know what you want, it's kind of like a catch-22 sort of a situation. It's like, hello. And the answer to what you want varies depending on who you are. You know, what you actually need or want to do with your life here on Earth. And and that part isn't that important. It's like, it's the decoration, you know, it's the stuff you like to look at maybe, but it's not the meat of it, or as one of my friends would say, the cake. It's like the guise that it takes, the flavor of the cake. None of that stuff matters either. It's just the fact that it's cake, you know, whatever it is. And that's one of the beauties of being in a world with so many different kinds of individuals who have so many different types of passions. It's like you don't follow in anyone else's actual footsteps. And if you're doing it right, you can see other people following along in a similar vein and celebrate the differences that they've discovered. It doesn't have to be a conflict of any kind. And that's one of the things that's different, or should be different, it's not always different, about paganism versus organized religion. In most organized religions, it's like they have a story, they have a path that everyone is supposed to follow. And you might have some variations in that, but you have to stick on that path. You're stuck with that narrative. And with the paganism, there's multiple narratives that you can choose from. You can choose a narrative that has gods in it and goddesses in it that come and visit you and have interactions with. You can choose one that doesn't have any at all. You can choose one that's just about, you know, what you can see and what you can touch on the earth and interacting and trying to help the planet. You can choose one that looks behind the scenes at the larger forces that might be affecting that. I mean, it's like, so when you're wanting to learn magic, that's why we talk about a daily practice. And that's the reason for a daily practice. You are creating a language, for one, with the universe, and you don't know exactly what all the words or the songs are to that language, but you have to start somewhere. So you start with something basic, like the healing chant and the sacred tree meditation. These are ways that you can tune yourself in to start to open up those senses that you have in order to be able to have a communication capability with the wider universe around you. And so you're learning a language that the universe can interact with you using, and you're opening up senses that you have not paid any attention to in some cases since you were little. I mean, kids are born with all those senses pretty active, most of them, and then they sort of are defined out of them by the adults around them who don't have those abilities and tell them that they're not real, that there's nobody there. And so then they think, okay, there's nobody there. I better either not tell anybody I still see somebody there, or I stop seeing somebody there. And so it's really important to look at how you're thinking about things, because those are the things that are going to trip you up. I mean, I tried to stop seeing stuff when I was in kindergarten or first grade, when I first saw all those lights in the sky and nobody else saw the lights. And they were so friggin' bright, and they were flying around all over the place. I mean, they were just everywhere, all on the horizon, outside the window, and nobody else saw them but me. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm seeing things that they can't see. That means I'm different from them. I don't want to be different from them. I better stop seeing these things. And I really worked hard at not seeing them after that for a while. It didn't work because it just didn't take for me, which is good as far as it goes. But anyway, back to daily practices. Because what you're doing, like with me casting the circle every night before I go to bed, doing it on all three planes, not just on the physical plane, but on the astral plane, the mental plane, and sometimes even on the akasha, I learn and develop more communication skills with the universe when I do that. And each time I do it, I learn something new. It's like the complexity of something does not indicate the worth or the value of it as a magical practice. The most simple thing that you can do can turn out to be the most profound thing that you can do for yourself. So that's why I shared that first, in case I suddenly wasn't here, or decided this wasn't for me, or there were no people who were really interested in hearing what I had to say, or my experiences, or anything like that, So when you first start out, you need to have a daily practice of some kind, whether it's 5 minutes that you spend doing mindfulness meditation, or going for a walk, or sitting under a tree, or saying a poem, or doing an exercise like, this yoga, salutation to the sun, first thing in the morning when the sun comes up, can be a magical exercise, not just a physical exercise. Doing something with your whole attention is the point. The thing itself isn't as important as the fact that you're bringing your full attention to the thing. And as you continue to do that, it's sort of like you're going over the same sound over and over and over again, the same route that you're taking in your brain to get where you're going, and it starts to widen that passage, and it starts to become stable so that it's there all the time whether you do something or not. That's where I'm at this point, where I've done so much of this so often for so many years that, I can skip a day here and there. It's not really going to affect my communion ability with the universe. And, I still have my daily practices that I try to do, like the poem to Aurora that I do most mornings. I don't remember every morning. Or the chants that I've learned to continue to charge them up, like the Garuda chant that Garuda gave us, or the healing chant. I do that one a lot before going to sleep at night. And just to reassert those pathways that I've created. So there's no substitute at all for doing. There's just no way around it. And the things that are important to be able to develop, as Ian said, willpower is definitely one of them. There's also your imagination, to be able to visualize things, whether you think of it as visual. I think there's a problem with defining what visualizations actually are, that a lot of people think that means you have to literally see it like it was happening right in front of you in your head, but you don't. You can just do a narrative in your head, and that can be a form of visualization. If you're going to develop clairvoyant ability, it requires some form of visual exercise. So Ian and I were talking the other day, and he says for people who are having trouble with visualization, that usually that means a problem not a problem, but imbalance with the fire element, and that staring at a candle and try to stare at it for like 5 minutes without blinking will help to overcome that idea. But the other thing, of course, is telling yourself you can't visualize. If you are continually reminding yourself that you can't do something, then you're sort of writing a narrative for the universe. And the universe goes like, okay, you can't do that. That's fine with us, whatever. And then, complaining about the fact you can't do it doesn't work, because you have to actually try to do it and overcome that. We all have things we have to work around. We are in physical bodies. There's no way around that. Every one of us is going to have some kind of challenge, whether it's a chronic illness or a breathing disability, or a physical disability, or having difficulty with movement or with concentration. There's all of those things that each one of you has to figure out a workaround, how to adapt to the limitations that your physical body might have, because when you're in the spirit body, you don't have any limitations. Those things actually don't matter. So there's no way to say this is how you do it for each person, because we're all so uniquely different. So willpower, visualization, concentration. If you have a great idea and it just goes like this, in and out, and it's gone, then you're not going to get anything done. You have to be able to concentrate and focus. I guess focus would be the more correct term for what I'm talking about. To be able to maintain your focus on a single objective. That's how you get your will to work. I mean, you have to be able to focus all of your attention on one thing. And it's a funny thing. So I was part of an experiment at the University of Regina in Saskatchewan. There was a psychologist there who was doing experiments with people who had out-of-body experiences, who were healers and that kind of thing, and channelers, as in my case, as both a channeler and a healer. And he had me hooked up to, it was called a mind mirror. It was like a headgear kind of thing you stuck on your head, and then it read your beta, alpha, delta, or theta and delta waves. So, it read those particular waves. There are waves above and below that it doesn't read, I'm sure. But those are the main ones that they use in EEGs when they're trying to scan a brain and see exactly what's going on. And they can see issues with those wave forms or whatever that might be at the root of epileptic seizures and that kind of thing. So I'm hooked up to this thing, and we're not doing anything in particular. He's just talking to me, and he said I had the most asymmetrical brainwave pattern he'd ever seen, which I wasn't sure what that meant at the time, but then later I figured it out. I have my alpha waves, or my beta waves in this case, are like, they're going this, independently. It's like this part is doing one thing while this part's doing something completely different. So they're not like in sync going together. It's like they're all over the place. And he thought that was kind of interesting, that it was so asymmetrical. And some people might think that that's a liability, but when I focus and concentrate, it goes away. He had me hooked up to the mind mirror, and he had a person that I was doing a healing on hooked up to the mind mirror. And when I started to do my healing work, the machine had different settings. So like the first setting is like 1 to 10. The second setting is 1 to 100. The third setting is 1 to 1,000. So, it can read the actual levels of the brainwave pattern. And he couldn't find the top of my alpha waves. When he went to the highest setting that he could go to see where my alpha waves were, and they were still pegging the machine completely out to the side. So however much energy I produce when I'm doing healing energy, it apparently, at least at that point, could not be measured. And of course, at that level, I was completely quiet everywhere else. And so I think that for me, I don't worry about trying to quiet my mind and still my mind a lot, because I know that when push comes to shove and I'm ready to do something, I'm on board, and there I am. So it's a funny thing, but it was very interesting to me. And while he was doing this during one of our sessions, suddenly the lowest frequencies in the brain, I think they're the theta frequency. I'll have to look this up too, because I don't remember. But the lower frequency that your brain produces, which is only supposed to happen when you're asleep, started only the left side of my brain produced that pattern. And he was like, what are you doing? What's going on? Because according to science, you can't produce that wave when you're awake. And I was obviously, my eyes were open and I'm talking. And I told him that that was my spirit guide, Moida, that she was fascinated by this machine because it could detect her as she interacted with me, which I thought also was kind of fascinating. So that was kind of a cool little thing. We actually had her come in and do a session. When she came in, my beta waves went and pegged. And he's like, are you thinking a lot? And she's like, I call it being present. So in order to communicate, she had to use the shorter waves in my brain. In order to enter, she used the lower ones. So I thought that was just sort of a fascinating little segue. Anyway, but so willpower, focus, visualization, and then a reason, you know. It's like if there's not an emotional reason for doing something, it sort of falls apart. If it's all intellectual, so there's that factor as well as the intuition, like when's the right time, what's the right thing. Intuition is an important ability to have. So everything that you do, no matter how quote unquote mundane it might be in the real world, that helps you to develop and nurture those particular qualities is going to help you in your magic. That's all there is to it. It's like if you're an artist and you can, you know, have an artistic vision and you want to bring something to life, that's part of magic. It's like magic isn't just doing a spell or doing a ritual. It's everywhere, all the time. It's in everything, and it's just our lack of connection to it as a general sense, as a humans. Really, we've tried to like think our way away from it to a rather extreme degree, and we're starting to come back, hopefully, in the other direction. It's like life is incredible. All these things that are out the window and in the air and under the ground, and you know, the variety and the beauty, and you know, yeah, nature's dangerous, but it's amazing to look at too. It's like the whole thing. It's just an incredible experience to be alive. So having expectations too well defined as to what it is you're trying to accomplish or what magic is all about is one of the other things that'll block you from being able to do it. Because it's alive. It's a living thing. It's not a static energy field that you can just tap into. It has a consciousness of its own, the universe, which is what magic comes from. And it's that interface between you and it that is the key to all of this. So trying not to worry about how long it'll take, because it's a journey. I mean, I started studying tarot when I was in high school, so in like 64. And it's just a constant exploration. I'm always learning new things, finding out new things, having new experiences, and that's what it's all about. I don't understand how people can get bored because there's just too many things to do, or see, or experience, or be, or whatever. But anyway, so not putting unrealistic expectations on you, being okay with changing your mind, because as you explore, go down a rabbit hole that you think you're interested in, you might get farther in and discover that there's something about it that doesn't suit you, that doesn't feel right. It's okay to stop going down the rabbit hole. You can come back and go down a different one. You know, you learn from your mistakes. If you don't learn from your mistakes, you're doing it wrong. If you're not making mistakes, you're doing it wrong, because you know it's an experiment. It's exploration by nature, by its very essence. It's going to work sometimes really well and not work sometimes at all. And there's so many different factors that can have an impact on that. So it's like when I'm doing a piece of art with my beads, I actually used this as an example when I was teaching at the prison. I would bring in my tree, which is, you guys haven't seen yet, but it's like huge. It's a huge, complicated, the most complicated thing I've ever beaded. It's a tree of life kind of thing. It's got like a turtle in it and Celtic roots and god and goddess in the trunk, and it's half rowan tree, half oak tree for the creation of man and woman in Irish mythology, where woman came from rowan and the man came from oak. It's got animals in the tree. I mean, it's got all kinds of stuff. It's an extremely detailed piece. It took at least 4 years for me to make it, 2 beads at a time. And that's how I look at a lot of this process. It's like I put on 2 beads. That doesn't seem like much. I put another 2 beads on. That doesn't seem like much. I outline an area. There's still a lot to fill in. But I keep on doing it a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. Eventually I have this amazing piece of art, a tapestry of my vision that's better than what I had imagined it could be, that I've put all of that time and energy into. And it happens. And that's what this practice is like. It's like every day you do a little something, it adds to the next something, to the next something, to the next something. And you're building your tapestry of life. And have fun doing it. It doesn't have to be like chore if you're really having to beat yourself over the head with a stick, unless you really think you need it. And it's like, yeah. But yeah, so that would be the core of it all, really. And there's no one way to do it. So there's no like manual that says start here, do there, blah, blah, blah. Personally, I think grounding is the first thing you need to learn how to do, and centering so that you're in yourself and your own body, and then shielding so you learn about boundaries, and then connecting, because then you're safe connecting, and you sort of you're more in charge. So if I was going to give a recipe for doing this, whatever method you used, those would be the steps to do in that order to get the fastest, most concrete results. So, okay, I'm going to stop this one now. This is Siofra Bradigan, and this has been Siofra's Magic Alcove. Blessed be.